The picture you see in front of you is a picture of racist, conservative radio and talk show host Sean Hannity. Sean Hannity is a shock jock. How many of you know that Sean Hannity did not graduate from college? Yes, he did attend Adelphi University in New York. Yes, he attended NYU in New York. But no, he didn't graduate from either one of them. Sean Hannity got his start in radio, conservative radio, and the venom that he spewed got him a large following. His following, obviously, was mainly white conservative people who agreed with the commentary that he made over the radio. He got into Fox with one of those early shows where they would have a Republican and a Democrat debating issues. I think it was Combs and Hannity. And that show was really successful because, they went back and forth, and, Sean was doing his thing and Combs was doing his. So the show was really successful. But anyway, after that show shut down, he ended up getting his own show. Now, Sean Hannity lives and dies based on conservative attacks on Democrats, progressives. And he particularly loves going after President Obama, Hillary Clinton, and any other progressive Democratic voice. And then you can always throw in Bernie Sanders. He went after him as well. He had a love affair, though brief, with Ted Cruz, and he pumped him up like crazy until Cruz dropped out. And then he jumped on the Donald Trump bandwagon, like so many other conservatives. Sean Hannity, in my opinion, creates more racial hatred in this country than pretty much anybody else. Now, normally on Sean's show, he's got a couple of partners in crime. His primary partner in crime is Rudy Giuliani. Yeah, racist Rudy is still living off of 9/11, still claiming that he saved constant black lives in New York with his policies, principle of which was Bill Bratton's stop-and-frisk, which the Supreme Court declared to be unconstitutional, and Bratton has now come to Jesus and admitted that the stop-and-frisk policies created more problems than they solved. But you won't hear Rudy Giuliani talking about Bratton's current opinion of the stop-and-frisk policy. And if you don't know what the stop-and-frisk policy was, it basically was if a cop looked at you and became suspicious, you didn't have to do it. You could just be walking down the street, cop looked at you and became suspicious of you for you were walking too fast, or you were walking too slow, or you were walking from side to side, or you were looking up, down, all around. The cop could stop you and frisk you. Well, in 1 year they did, I believe it was about 750,000 stop and frisks, and 80% of those stop and frisks were on minorities. You would think that with them making all of those stop and frisks, that they would have generated a lot of arrests. But in actuality, on that 80%, only 10% of the people that they stopped and frisked that were minorities generated anything from a ticket to an arrest. And I will tell you that the majority of them were tickets for things like jaywalking, spitting in the street, loitering, that kind of crap. Kind of sounds a lot like the Department of Justice report on Baltimore, where they also were utilizing stop and frisk. And if you have a chance, you need to pull up that Department of Justice report on Baltimore, and it really tells a grim story about how the police attacked the black community. But anyway, I digress. You know, Rudy was known as Racist Rudy in New York because that's exactly what he was. Now, Donald Trump this evening embraced that stop and frisk that the Supreme Court has declared to be unconstitutional. He wants to have a national stop and frisk. Yeah, and that's going to work out real well. Now, the thing about the stop and frisk, that actually is a violation of your Fourth Amendment rights. And Mr. Giuliani, along with Mr. Hannity, believe that black people need to give up their Fourth Amendment rights, while white people shouldn't have to. Funny thing about stop and frisk, that 20% of white people that they actually stopped and frisked, approximately 30% of those people generated tickets and arrests. So they were getting a higher percentage of tickets and arrests, and again, for, you know, some of it's stupid crap, you know, marijuana possession, spitting in the street, jaywalking, intoxication, that kind of stuff. Broken windows, basically. But they were getting a higher percentage of arrests when they stop and frisk white people than they were getting by stopping and frisking minorities. Do you think that they would have believed their own data and started to stop and frisk more white people and less minorities? Nah, can't do that. That's kind of like their selective enforcement of laws. They tend to ignore petty white crimes, but will magnify those same petty black crimes, and then they'll generate reports that say that minorities, black people in particular, are committing crimes at a higher rate than whites, but that's just because they're not enforcing the laws equally. But I digress. Sean Hannity loves blaming all of the inner city problems on the President of the United States, like the President is running the cities, on the Attorney Generals, like they're actually running the police departments within the cities, instead of blaming the mayors who directly run the cities, instead of blaming the police departments when things are going wrong. No, everything that's wrong with the country belongs to the president and to Hillary Clinton, even though she was just a senator in New York and then Secretary of State, had no law enforcement responsibility or governing responsibility. Still, everything is Hillary's fault, along with Obama and Holder and Loretta Lynch. All their problems Don't blame any of the mayors. Don't blame any of the governors. No. That just tells me that, this guy is a hater. He's a major hater. Now, he and Rudy both agree that the criminal justice system is fair. They see nothing wrong with the criminal justice system, even though statistics show that black people do commit crimes just as white people do, but when black people go through the criminal justice system, they face harsher sentences than their white brethren who commit the same crimes. But, something, Sean, that's fair as far as he's concerned. Black people should go to jail for longer periods of time than white people. It's called white privilege. Sean's always bringing up the fact that so many people are killed in the city of Chicago. I think he quoted 4,000 plus people killed since Obama's been in office. And he, without a doubt, will always ask, how many of those people do you know the names of? Now that's an attack on the Black Lives Matter movement. But I got a question. Sean, you're in the news business. It's your job to report the news. So my question is this. How many of those people do you know, since it's your job to report the news and to report the deaths of people? I bet you can't name one. Now, in this current situation down in Charlotte, North Carolina, Sean has had Giuliani on talking about how he wouldn't allow it in his city, like he owned the city and we would just happen to live in it, but the city belonged to him. He had Newt Gingrich on talking about dual societies. He had Mark Fuhrman on, and when he put Mark Fuhrman on, I couldn't watch it anymore because Mark Fuhrman is a known avowed racist, and the only place you'll find Mark Fuhrman appearing on is Fox News. But Sean started talking about the people that were rioting and the violence and all of that. One person, by the way, was shot and killed this evening. Now the cops are claiming that he was shot by a civilian, and the people that were near the guy claim he was shot by cops. Who knows? When there's chaos going on and shots get fired, nobody knows where the bullets are coming from. The only thing that you know is where the bullets end up. But Sean claimed that the people shouldn't have been out in the streets protesting. Now, earlier in the day, the protests were peaceful, and my thinking on that is because shit happens, especially at night, maybe when they are forming these protests, they should let everybody know that they are ending the protest at a certain time and tell everybody that they should go home, okay? And not be out on those streets to give people like Sean Hannity cannon fodder to report on and to denigrate people. Now, getting back to Mr. Hannity and his hate of Black Lives Matters. He loves to repeat that phrase, pigs in a blanket, fry like bacon, which was uttered by the Minnesota chapter of the Black Lives Matter movement when they were marching. But he'll never tell you that there were police that were marching, protecting, whatever, but they were walking with the marchers. And they were saying the same thing. They were repeating that chant, pigs in a blanket, fry them like bacon. He won't tell you that. But there's video of it, and there are reports of it. But that wouldn't fit his narrative about how hateful the Black Lives Matter movement is. He also loves to quote, "What do we want? Dead cops. When do we want them? Now." Okay, that phrase, by the way, came out of New York. I don't know about the police chanting that phrase, but one thing I do know is they've never arrested a Black Lives Matter person for killing anyone. Now, protesting, possibly burning or looting something, yeah, I'll give you that, even though I believe the majority, 99%, in Sean's words, are peaceful protesters, and you'll have 1% of people within any movement that don't really have their head on straight and like to agitate. So, for the 1%, Mr. Hannity wants to denigrate the entire movement. Now, he won't give that group any credit for trying to work within the system, which they have. There are approximately 40 states with laws regarding police behavior and changes in the criminal justice system that are a positive for black people and for all other people. In particular, New York and California, anytime there is a police killing of a citizen, instead of the local prosecutors getting the cases are now referred up to the Attorney General in that state for them to assign a prosecutor that is not in the area so that there can be no hanky-panky because of the interaction between the local DA and the police department. That just didn't magically appear. That was the Black Lives Matter movement pushing the legislators and the governors to make a change. That's working within the system. That's peaceful. That's supposedly what citizens are supposed to do. But you won't hear about that from Sean Hannity. Now, that would be too much like right. What you want to hear from Sean Hannity, though, this evening was, why are these people protesting? Why aren't they waiting for the facts? Why are they rushing to judgment? It's funny how Sean can be so hypocritical. And I'll give you two instances. In the George Zimmerman case, Sean rushed to judgment. He took George Zimmerman's side. He had George Zimmerman on his show, or a family member of George Zimmerman, or an attorney for George Zimmerman on his show at least 3 to 4 times a week for a 15-minute segment. Georgie was so sweet. Georgie is a nice guy. Georgie's being railroaded. That had an effect. When George finally went to trial and the bullshit prosecutor, the state prosecutor, took the case. Oh, and by the way, I forget her name, but they voted her out because she was, let us say, overzealous when it came to the prosecution of black people, but for some reason her conviction rate on white people was sadly lacking. How incompetent she was. So anyway, she got voted out. So fast forward, and Sean's public embrace of George Zimmerman had its desired effect, and Mr. Zimmerman got off. And just how upstanding has Mr. Zimmerman been since he got acquitted of the murder of Trayvon Martin? He's had various run-ins with the police. He gets on Twitter and runs his mouth, showing pictures of that dead young man and basically admitting that he killed that man. That's the upstanding citizen that George Zimmerman is. That's the person that Sean Hannity support. Well, I don't know if he still supports him. I think pretty much most people have seen the light on George Zimmerman and have stepped back away from him. But let me give you another instance. Anybody remember the Bundy Ranch standoff? If you don't, that's when Cliven Bundy, I guess it's Cliven Bundy, was stealing from the federal government. Stealing from the federal government? How do you do that? Well, Mr. Bundy has a ranch. He may not have it now because I think they grabbed him up. As a matter of fact, I'm pretty sure they grabbed him up along with his two sons. But he either had or has a ranch in Nevada, and he has cattle on the ranch. And the ranch is fenced, but the fences are broken down. So his cattle were grazing on government land, just like a lot of other ranchers in that area of Nevada. The government realized what was going on, and they were charging fees to the ranches for cattle grazing on government land. None of the other ranches had a problem paying the fees. Probably were discounted, but I can't say that for sure because I don't know. But Mr. Bundy, he had a problem paying the fees. The fees ended up totaling close to $1 million by the time the government got him in court and won their suit against him. But Mr. Bundy decided that court decisions don't mean shit. So it got to the point where the government told him that they were going to snatch up his cattle in lieu of payment of the fees. Well, now all of a sudden, Cliven Bundy is yelling government overreach, government abuse. The government is trying to trample on a little guy. Well, you got a bunch of white supremacists that went out to support the Bundys. Okay? And here comes Sean Hannity, because President Obama was the president, and President Obama represented the government trying to go after the little guy. Now, these white supremacists don't fuck around. When they came in force, and they came with weapons. AR-15s, AK-47s, etc. Sean Hannity supported that. He supported citizens with weapons, training weapons on federal officers. Sound like the right thing to do to most of you? Sound like something that officers should have taken action against? Sound like the officers, when weapons were trained on them, should have shot the people who had trained the weapons on them? Sounds like that to me, but the federal government didn't want another situation like Waco, where they went in and killed a bunch of people that were pretty much basically doing the same thing. So the government backed down. Victory for Cliven Bundy. Victory for Sean Hannity. We the people are victorious against the big bad government, even though we the people are criminals. Those are the kind of people that Sean Hannity likes to support. Well, the Bundy boys went up to Oregon to try to do the same thing. And Mr. Hannity, as usual, gotta support them because they're good old American boys. And the government is screwing everybody. Now, it didn't matter that the town didn't want those boys up there. And the town said so. So those boys took over a federal facility. Actually, it was a federal shack, okay? But anything the federal government owns is a federal facility. So bottom line, those boys got arrested. And they've been in court. Now, I don't know what the final disposition of their court case is, but they're obviously going to be found guilty because they were trespassing and took possession of a government facility. And the funny part about it was they got their dad arrested because when their dad left his ranch and flew up to Oregon, I guess to support his boys, they arrested his ass at the airport. So not only were they placed into custody and went to jail, they got their father arrested and he's in jail as well. Sean Hannity lives a different life from most people, and he damn sure lives a different life than most black people. Now, he loves bringing up Trayvon Martin. There was one eyewitness in one video, and I think that eyewitness was bullshit. One thing we do know that George Zimmerman was instructed not to follow Trayvon Martin. We know that George Zimmerman instigated the contact. There's no video, and anytime there's no video, it's always he said, she said. And if you parrot a story long enough, weak-minded people will believe it. And there were some weak-minded people on that jury, especially given the fact that the prosecution didn't put on the strongest case in the world. Hang on a second. There we go. It went a little out of focus for me. And I would venture to say that the prosecution damn near threw the case. So he loves bringing up Trayvon Martin. He loves bringing up Michael Brown. He loves claiming that he was right, but I submit that in both cases, George Zimmerman was wrong and the prick that shot Mike Brown was wrong, even though the jury arrived at a different decision in the Trayvon Martin case, and it never even got to trial on the Mike Brown case. That case should have been at least tried in front of a jury. But the dirty DA, who, he also was kicked out of office. The dirty DA decided that there was insufficient evidence to prosecute the police officer who quit and left town. You don't hear him talking about Tamir Rice. 12-year-old kid got killed by a police officer who arrived on the scene and within 2 seconds had shot that boy. You don't hear him talking too much about that one. You also don't hear him talking about John Crawford, minding his own business, walking around Walmart with a toy rifle, which Walmart sells, and cops come in, no warning, shoot and kill him. You don't hear him talking about that. It's a lot of cases where black people have gotten killed. How many times have you heard him talk about the man in South Carolina that the cop shot and killed and then tried to phony up the evidence? You don't hear too much about that. You don't hear too much about that kid in South Carolina. A lot of South Carolina. You don't hear too much about that kid that went into that church and killed those 9 people. He don't talk about that. He don't talk about how black people feel about those cases. No justice, no peace. All he can bring up are cases where a jury or a DA has made a decision that he agrees with. So I'll say this. Sean Hannity, you are a goddamn racist to your heart. And your day is coming. Things are not going to get better until there's accountability. Now, in the case of Terrence Crutcher, both the local prosecutor and the DOJ are looking at this, are doing an investigation. Now, I did a video on this, and funny thing about it, the attorney for the shooter, Betty Shelby, has had 3 different narratives come out. One, that she was in fear for her life, even though she was the one with the gun. He had no gun. She didn't turn on her dash cam, which I don't believe that, because the dash cam is supposed to activate as soon as you put the lights on. And in all the videos that you can see, when the second police car rolls up there, she is already out of the car with her weapon drawn on Mr. Crutcher, and her lights are flashing. Now, one of the stories that she told is that when she came up on the scene, and she was supposedly heading for, I guess, a non-emergency call or whatever, she came up on the scene, saw the van, you know, the SUV, that was half in one lane and half in another. And you would think that a police officer would, at least at that point, turn their lights on in order to warn oncoming traffic from behind her that there was a situation there. But she claimed that the lights weren't on, but again, clearly you can see the lights were on. And there's 2 minutes where there is no video. Now, you could say what you want, but this is what I think happened. She rolled up on that van, SUV. She turned the lights on. Dash cam video is recording. She gets out of her car. Here comes Mr. Crutcher, thinking that she's there to help him. This is a big black man and she's a little white woman. She started to pee her panties, pulled a gun on him and told him to put his hands up. All the videos that we see show him with his hands up. He probably tried to explain what happened, and she told him to keep his hands up and to go to his car to get his ID, proof of insurance, etc. He turns his back to her and is walking to the car. Now, he's not running, he's not staggering, he's not doing anything other than walking straight and slowly to the car as instructed. He put his hand down to open the car door. Now, by this time, there were other officers that had arrived on the scene, but they weren't there to hear her initial commands to this man. When he put his hand down to open the door, that's when one of the officers fired a taser. That one needs to be explained. And she fired her gun, killing this man. Now, if you think that sounds strange, no, it's not strange, because the same exact thing happened in South Carolina when a police officer thought he observed a black man driving his car and had gone through a stop sign, pulling into a gas station. The police officer pulled up on the car, pulled his gun on the black man, and told him, after a brief exchange, to get his license and proof of insurance. The man turned to go into his car to get the information that the officer requested, and the officer shot him. Now, thank God that that man survived, and the officer was charged and currently is doing a 4-year sentence for, well, they didn't charge him with attempted murder, and they didn't charge him with manslaughter, but they charged him with a felony, and he got 4 years. I submit that's what happened. Now, the police and the attorney submit that, first, this man was on PCP, and we got to wait for the toxicology report to come back in. But I don't think he was on PCP. But I do think that the police planted a vial of PCP in his vehicle in order to cover the police officer. But I could be wrong because I wasn't there. But the first narrative was that he went to the car and was reaching into the driver's window, and she was in fear of her life because she thought that he was potentially reaching for a gun. Unfortunately, the video doesn't support that. The video, which I did a video on that one too, shows that the window for the driver was up. So how the hell was he reaching into a car window when it's up? It also showed in the video that the driver's side passenger window was up. So he can't be reaching into the car for anything because the windows are up. Then the next narrative was that she recognized that he was on PCP and she feared for her life because he was on PCP. Well, being under the influence obviously is a crime, but is it a crime that justifies you shooting a person who made no aggressive moves towards you with open hands, who had his back to you and was a distance from you for the entire encounter, And I'm not even mentioning the fact that if you were in fear for your life, why would you run up on him? And the video shows that she quickly approached him, and then a second officer approached the Crutcher that she had. He eventually joined her, and they were equal distance as Mr. Crutcher was walking to his driver's side door. Okay. Then another narrative was floating around out there that she thought that she had a taser in her hand and not her handgun. Well, this woman is a 5-year veteran of the police force. You would think that she would know the difference between holding a taser and holding a handgun. You would think that. But that's just me. You know, maybe it makes sense to you. But that defense didn't fly in Oklahoma, of all places, where that pay-for-play cop told the jury the same thing, that when he shot a black man that was down and subdued in the back, he told the jury that he thought that he had a taser. Come to find out that he hadn't gone through any of the training for an auxiliary police officer. Records were falsified, and he got 4 years. So I'm wondering, this woman is supposedly an expert on recognizing people under the influence, but somehow you have a helicopter which shot the second video, and inside the helicopter you hear all of the commentary about Mr. Crutcher being a thing and not a person. How Mr. Crutcher was looked like a bad dude. How Mr. Crutcher looked like he was on something. Now, you tell me how from at least 200 to 300 feet in the air that you can see the look on someone's face, even with binoculars, unless you got some damn sure super high binoculars, and that hasn't been mentioned. We got issues here, folks, and the person you see in front of you is one of the people that are pushing these issues. In my mind, without a doubt, he is a racist. He hates President Obama with a passion. He is one of those alt-right, and I'm not even going to call it alt-right. He is a white supremacist, plain and simple. He is a Steve Bannon supporter who was running Breitbart, which, if you didn't know it, dedicates a specific section to the denigration of black people and other sections that denigrate Jews, but their claim to fame is denigrating black people. That's his MO. Now, most people in America don't subscribe to that, and I want to go on record in saying that, but you do have a segment that does. This Sean Hannity was one of Donald Trump's main enablers for at least the past 5 to 7 years when Donald Trump was pushing his birtherism. Sean Hannity went out of his way anytime he had Donald Trump on his show to bring up that birtherism theory. And I did a video on that. We need to get rid of this guy. But, of course, that's not going to happen because he's got a very large following. Not as great as he used to have. Same thing with, what's that fat guy's name? I forget his name, but, Rush Limbaugh. Rush Limbaugh used to have a huge following. But people actually started waking up and showing some common sense, and his ratings have fallen off, and now he basically is a ratings nightmare for most radio stations, and now I believe he's not on most stations. I know they cut him way down. He went on, I think, Sirius XM or one of those pay for play radio stations. And Sean Hannity had a large number of his radio affiliated station kick him to the curb. Now he's still strong in Texas. He still comes on every day for 3 hours in Texas. So, you know, he still has an income stream, and obviously he's on Fox, you know, every night. But until we do something about guys like this, and when I say do something, I mean stop watching them, getting them off the air, you know, for the radical, biased, racist views that he spews, things are really not going to get better. If we're ever going to come together, it's guys like this that we need to disavow, because they do nothing but divide us. There's no unity whatsoever in anything that this guy says.